Hello guys, and welcome to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the math module in Python. Python has a built-in module called the math module that provides a ton of mathematical functions that are useful for scientific calculations, data processing, and numerical analysis. In this video, we'll go over the most common functions in this module and how to use them effectively. So if you have found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe. So let's get started. To use the math module, you need first to import it. And to import it, I have import math. And once it is imported, we will get access to all the functions that we are going to discuss in this video. So let's get started. First, let's take a look at some of the basic arithmetic operations we can perform using the math module. One arithmetic operation we can perform using the math module is rounding numbers, and we have two ways of rounding numbers inside the math module, that is ceiling and floor. So with the ceiling method or function, this rounds a number up to the nearest integer, and the floor will round the number down to the nearest integer. So let's take a look at the demonstration of this. So I have my print statement, then inside my parentheses I have math.cell and brackets open, then I have 4.2. So you see here, since we are talking about cell, it's going to round it to the nearest or up to the nearest integer. And so when we run this, it's going to return 5 since we are running it up to the nearest integer. Also, when we demonstrate the math.floor also and place an integer of 4.8, our output is also going to give us floor, indicating that it rounds it down to the nearest integer. That is basically how we can perform simple rounding using the math module. Also, we can find the absolute value of a number using the math module. So we can do that using the FABS method. So the FABS method will return the absolute positive value of a number. So this works similarly to the Python built-in absolute method, but always returns a float. So let's take a look at an example. So inside my print statement, I have math.fabs, and inside the parentheses I have minus 7.3. Our output will give us 7.3 when we run this, indicating that it gives us the absolute positive value inside this script. Let's now take a look at another thing we can do with the math module, and that is factorial. So we can return the factorial of an integer using the factorial method. So this only works for non-negative integers. So if I placed a negative integer into it, it won't work. So let's take a look at a demonstration of this. Inside my print statement, I have math.factorial, then it takes a value of 5. And so when we run this, we see that our output is going to give us 20, indicating that 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 will give us 20. Now that we now know how to perform factorial inside of the math module, let's now take a look at another thing that we might use when writing programs, and that is the modulo with the fmod function. So the fmod function works like the modulus operator, but ensures floating point precision. So unlike the modulus operator that might return the remainder, it might not return the floating point, the fmod will return the remainder with the floating point. So let's take a look at an example. Inside my print statement, I have math.fmod, then I'll insert the value that we are trying to divide with, that is 17.5, comma, the value we are dividing by, that is 5. And so when we run this, we see that the output is going to give us 2.5, indicating that the remainder will be 2.5 when we divide 5 by 17.5. So this is how we can perform some basic arithmetic operations using the math module. In the next section, we'll take a look at how to perform power and logarithmic functions using the math module. Now, let's take a look at how to perform power and logarithmic functions using the math module. So my first thing is the power. So this works similarly to the asterisk operator, but this is more precise, and that involves using the POW function. So let's take a look at a demonstration of this. So I have my print statement, and inside my print statement I have math.power that takes in 2, 3. So 2 represents the base, then 3 represents the power. And so when we run this, we see that it's going to return 8.0. So the power function will always return a float. Let's go a little bit further by taking a look at how to perform square roots using the math module also. To perform the square root using the math module also, we use the sqrt function. So this sqrt function returns the square root of a number, and the input must be a non-negative, so it must not be a negative number. So let's take a look at how we can perform this operation. Inside my print statement, I have math.sqrt that takes in a value of 25. And so when we run this, we see that the output is going to give us 5.0, which is just the square root of 25. Let's now take a look at how we can perform logarithmic operations using the math module. We can perform the logarithmic operations in 2 ways, and that is using the log function, the log10 or the log10 function. So let's take a look at an example. I have the first log function takes a value with a given base, but the log x base 10 will take a logarithm value with a base of 10. So let's demonstrate this. So inside my print statement, I have math.log that takes in 100. So 100 becomes the logarithmic value and 10 becomes the base value. And so when we run this, we see that we're going to get 2.0. Also, we can use the log of base 10 function, and that is math.log of base 10 that takes in a value of 1000. And when we run this, we see that the output is going to give us 3. So this is how we can perform logarithm operations inside of Python using the math module. Now that we have a fair idea of how we can perform logarithmic operations using the math module, the next section we're taking a look at trigonometric functions that we can also perform inside the math module. There are so many trigonometric functions that are there that we can't even cover in this video. So I'll take a look at some of the most common trigonometric functions that we will encounter. But almost all the trigonometric functions that we will encounter in physics or maths will be related here. So let's take a look at some of the common ones, and that is the sine, cosine, and tangent. So let's take a look at a demonstration of how to perform these functions. So inside my print statement, I have math.sine that takes in a parenthesis of math.pi. So math.pi will basically return the pi value inside of this script, and we divide it by 2. And so when we run this, we see that our output is going to give us 1. So these functions that are the sine, cosine, and tangent will always take angles in radians. So that is how this works. So we can also perform the cos also, and that will take math.cos that takes in math.pi that will return negative 1.0. Also, when we print out the math.sine that takes in math.pi divided by 4, you see that it's also going to return 1 onto our console. That is how we can basically perform some of the trigonometric operations. Let's now take a look at how we can convert degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So to do that, we use the degrees method and the radians method. So let's take a look at a demonstration of this. So inside my print statement, I have math.degrees that takes in math.pi. And when I run this, you'll see that it's going to return 180 onto the console, basically indicating that we have converted our math.pi, which is in radians, into a degree. We can also convert the degrees back to radians using the radians method. So that will also take math.radians, that takes in a value of 90 degrees. And so when I run this, you see that I'll get 1.5708, which is also the same as pi divided by 2. So that is how we can perform some of the most common trigonometric functions inside of Python. In the next section, we're taking a look at some of the built-in constants that the math module provides for us. The math module in Python provides several useful mathematical constants that can help to prevent redefining them again later in our programs. So let's take a look at some of the most common mathematical constants that the math module provides. First is the pi constant. So the pi constant is provided by the math module. This is used in trigonometry and geometry. So to get the pi constant, what we need to do is, inside my print statement, I have math.pi, and so when I run this, you see that I'll get the value of pi printed on the console. Also, another constant that the math module provides is the LS number. So the LS number is used as base for natural logarithms. So let's take a look at how we can also get the constant for this value. So inside my print statement, I have math.e, and when I run this, you see that it's going to return the LS constant inside our console. The next constant that we need to talk about is the tau constant. The tau constant is equal to 2 pi. So to get that constant also, just have inside my print statement, that will take math.tau. And so when I run this, you see that I'll get 6.28, and that is 2 times pi. The next one is the infinity number, and this represents either positive or negative infinity. So to demonstrate this, I have my print statement that takes in math.infinity, that is INF, greater than 1 LS number than 10. And when I run this, you see that it's going to turn true, indicating that our math.infinity is greater than this number. The next constant in this section is the NaN, and this stands for not a number. So to get this, what we need to do is use the print statement. The next time I print statement, I can have math.isNum, then I will set math.num. So basically, this will return true, indicating that this is not a number. But the math.isNum checks to see whether this is not a number. And since this is not a number, it is going to return true for us on our console. So that is basically some of the most common constants that the math module provides for us. In the next section, we're taking a look at rounding and utility functions. I know that we have talked about rounding earlier, but this is a little bit different from the rounding that we talked earlier. So let's get started with that also. To perform rounding and utility inside of our math module, we have some functions that we need to also consider. Our first function is the trunc function, and this is used to truncate a number. This basically removes the decimal parts without rounding the number. So let's take a look at an example of this. So inside my print statement, I have math.trunc that takes in a value of 4.9. And so when I run this, you see that it's going to return 4. So it basically removes the decimal part without rounding it. Let's take a look at another function, that is the greatest common divisor, or GCD method. So the GCD function basically finds the greatest common divisor of two numbers. So let's demonstrate how this works. Inside my print statement, I have math.gcd that takes in a value of 48, then commas 18. And when we run this, we'll see that it's going to return 6, since 6 is the greatest common divisor among 48 and 18. Another function we will need to consider is, let's say we wanted to check if numbers are close to each other, or like in terms of proximity. We can use something called is close function. So this checks if two numbers are approximately equal. So to demonstrate this, I have my print statement that takes in math.isClose. Then inside my parentheses, I have 0.1 plus 0.2, comma 0.3. We know that Python has a floating point precision problem. So when we run this, we'll see that it's going to return true, indicating that it is approximately equal but not equal. I'll talk about floating point precision in a later video. So let's take a look at another function that we need to consider. That is the checking for NaN and infinity. We can do that using the isNum function and the isinf function. So the isNum function checks if our value is not a number, and the isinf checks if our value is infinity. So to demonstrate this, I have my print statement that takes in math.isNum, then it takes in math.num. So basically we did this earlier, and so when I run this, you see that's going to return true. When I also do that for the isinf or isinfinity method, and I say math.infinity as my value, you see that it's also going to return true. So that is basically how we can perform rounding and utility functions inside of Python using the math module. So that is basically it for the math module. The math module is packed with useful functions for calculations. So whether you are dealing with basic arithmetic, numerical, trigonometric, or mathematical constants, this module can help you get this done. So if you have found this video helpful, give it a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you want more tutorials on Python built-in models. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.